The following program is an in-depth analytical documentary intended for a mature audience and aims to be educational. The subject matter may be disturbing or triggering for some viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to Controversial Crimes. Before we dive into today's case, just a quick reminder, if you're passionate about in-depth crime analysis and thought-provoking discussions, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. If you enjoy the content, a like and share would really help support the channel. Now let's jump right in. What if a mother truly believed her children were already gone? Not missing, not kidnapped, but spiritually replaced. And what if that belief became the justification for murder? This case shook America to its core. A mother, two missing children, a doomsday prophecy, and a trail of sudden deaths surrounding a romance built on apocalyptic belief. But this is not simply a story about crime. It is a story about ideology and what happens when belief becomes absolute. Today we examine the case of Lori Vallow-Daybell. Not only what she did, not only what the courts decided, but the psychological architecture beneath it all. How does a belief system override biology? How does language reshape morality? And how does conviction become lethal? This is not sensational. This is analytical. This is Controversial Crimes. Born Lori Noreen Cox in 1973, Lori's early life appeared outwardly conventional. Friends described her as outgoing, confident, charismatic. She participated in pageants. She presented herself well. She was socially magnetic. But adulthood revealed instability, 5 marriages, financial disputes, custody conflicts, estranged relationships. A pattern begins to emerge. Those close to Lori describe someone who often fused her identity with romantic partners. She adopted their interests, mirrored their beliefs, anchored her sense of self in relational validation. When relationships were stable, she appeared stable. When they fractured, conflict followed. This kind of relational instability can reflect deep attachment insecurity, a reliance on external affirmation to stabilize internal identity. Validation becomes oxygen, and when oxygen is threatened, behavior escalates. In 2018, Lori attended a religious preparedness conference in Utah. There, she met Chad Daybell, an apocalyptic fiction author who claimed near-death experiences and prophetic visions. Chad taught that individuals could be ranked spiritually, light or dark. Some, he claimed, had already lost their original souls. According to witnesses, their connection was immediate. Chad reportedly told Lori she had lived multiple previous lives, that she was spiritually exalted, chosen. For someone whose identity relied on validation, this was not simply romantic attention, it was divine elevation. Together they began constructing a shared cosmology, a belief that they were the leaders of the prophesied 144,000 before the end times. A private theology, a closed feedback loop. Within such systems, doubt weakens, reinforcement strengthens, external contradiction becomes spiritual attack. This dynamic resembles what psychologists sometimes describe as a shared delusional system, where two individuals mutually reinforce the same false beliefs, insulating each other from reality. Chad provided prophetic structure. Lori provided devotion and eventually action. By mid-2019, Lori's language shifted dramatically. She began referring to certain individuals, including her husband Charles, as zombies. In her belief framework, a zombie was not metaphorical. It was someone whose original soul had departed and been replaced by a dark entity. And within that moral structure, killing the physical body was not murder, it was liberation. This is a classic example of moral disengagement. The moral category changes. The act is reframed. Harm becomes righteousness. And once someone is no longer viewed as fully human, empathy erodes. Language shifted first. Morality followed. Behavior would soon follow as well. On July 11, 2019, Lori's husband Charles Vallow was shot and killed in Arizona by Lori's brother Alex Cox. Alex claimed self-defense. Initially, authorities accepted the explanation, but prior to his death, Charles had warned the police that Lori believed he was possessed, that she saw herself as spiritually elevated, that she had threatened him. Charles had become an obstacle, financially, relationally, ideologically. Within rigid belief systems, obstacles are often reframed as threats, and threats are neutralized. Charles' life insurance policy did not pay out to Lori as expected, but the pattern had begun. Opposition was labelled dark, and darkness was removed. In September 2019, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan was last seen during a trip to Yellowstone National Park. Shortly afterward, 7-year-old Joshua JJ Vallow disappeared. Lori gave shifting explanations. JJ was staying with a friend. JJ was with relatives. JJ was being homeschooled. But school officials became concerned when JJ stopped attending classes, and then someone else began asking harder questions. JJ's grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, noticed something was wrong. JJ was autistic. He required routine, structure, familiarity. He was not a child who would simply vanish without explanation. Kay tried to contact Lori. No answer. She called again. No answer. She requested a welfare check in November 2019. When police arrived at Lori's Rexburg home, she calmly told officers JJ was with a friend. He wasn't. By the time police returned to follow up, Lori and Chad were gone. They had fled to Hawaii. While Kay and Larry pleaded publicly for information, speaking to the media, begging for proof that JJ was safe, Lori remained silent. The grandparents were not apocalyptic. They were not radicalized. They were desperate. Their persistence forced law enforcement escalation. Without their insistence, the timeline may have stretched far longer. This is an important psychological contrast. Grounded caregivers seeking truth versus ideological detachment seeking preservation of narrative. On October 19, 2019, Chad Daybell's wife Tammy suddenly died in Idaho. Her death was initially attributed to natural causes. Weeks later, Lori and Chad married in Hawaii. Grief appeared abbreviated. Within Lori and Chad's belief system, Tammy had reportedly been labelled dark. Again, the pattern repeats. Spiritual labelling, conflict, death, romantic consolidation, obstacle removal. In June 2020, investigators returned to Chad's property in Rexburg, armed with cell phone data placing Alex Cox at specific burial locations. They began to dig. They found JJ's remains in a shallow grave. Nearby, they discovered the burned and dismembered remains of Tylee. Forensic reality dismantled theological abstraction. This was no longer prophecy. It was soil disturbance, duct tape, burn evidence, intentional concealment. Belief had moved beyond rhetoric. It had become operational. In 2023, Lori stood trial in Idaho. Prosecutors argued this was not about faith. It was about money, sex, and power. They presented text messages discussing dark ratings. They presented financial records. They presented burial site evidence. The jury deliberated for less than 7 hours. Guilty on all major counts. She was sentenced to life without parole. Importantly, the jury rejected the idea that her beliefs negated responsibility. Competency evaluations determined she understood right from wrong. Belief does not equal legal insanity. Conviction does not erase accountability. In Arizona, proceedings related to Charles Vallow's death, Lori chose to represent herself. Pro se. She cross-examined witnesses. She objected. She addressed the court. Self-representation in homicide cases is rare and rarely successful. Why choose it? Control, narrative ownership, visibility. Individuals with strong grandiose traits may reject professional mediation, believing they can manage perception better than trained attorneys. In court, Lori frequently shifted blame towards her deceased brother Alex Cox. An unavailable co-conspirator cannot testify. Blame displacement becomes easier. Her strategy emphasized procedural issues rather than emotional accountability. Observers noted moments where she appeared to smile during serious testimony. Affect appeared incongruent, but incongruence does not automatically mean insanity. It may reflect detachment, dissociation, contempt, or coping under stress. What it demonstrated was cognitive awareness. She understood the system. She engaged with it. Chad provided prophecy. Lori provided devotion and execution. Their relationship functioned as a closed belief loop. Chad validated Lori's spiritual elevation. Lori validated Chad's prophetic authority. Each removed doubt in the other. In isolation, extreme beliefs can weaken. In partnership, they intensify. Shared destiny suppresses skepticism. Romantic reinforcement strengthens conviction. This is ideological codependence. And when ideology includes elimination of dissent, the danger escalates exponentially. Based on observable behavior, not clinical diagnosis, patterns emerge. Spiritual exceptionalism, grandiosity, identity fusion with divine mission, emotional compartmentalization, persistent externalization of blame, rigid cognition resistant to contradiction, planning and concealment behaviors undermine impulsivity defenses. Financial actions demonstrate practical awareness. This was not chaotic madness. It was structured conviction, weaponized belief. This case forces an uncomfortable question. When belief reframes harm as salvation, how does society intervene? Language changes first, then moral categories shift, then behavior follows. Charismatic individuals can weaponize ideology, but ideology does not remove responsibility. Accountability must remain stronger than belief. 2 children lost their lives. Tylee Ryan, Joshua J.J. Vallow. A husband died. A wife died. Multiple families were shattered. At the center of it all was a belief system that redefined morality to justify elimination. The courts have spoken. The sentences are final. But the psychological lessons remain urgent. This has been Controversial Crimes, inside the mind of Lori Vallow-Daybell. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown insightful, subscribe to join us for more deep dives into the cases that shifted the world's moral compass. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next investigation.